when you are dating, you are making a decision that could potentially impact not only your life, but the future life of your kids and future generations. In this video, I'll be sharing a brief summary of the memoir, The Glass Castle by Jeannette Walls, and I'll also be sharing some key takeaways on marriage and parenting. Many people jump into marriages, or even worse, remain in toxic relationships because they don't have the knowledge, the courage, or the confidence to move on, to choose differently. And this is why I really want to share this memoir with you guys, because all of us can learn something from this tragedy. And don't worry, it did turn out in a semi-hopeful way, so at least there is that. But there was a lot of work that had to go into these kids' lives in order for them to break free from the chains that their parents had basically put on them. When you choose a partner, you are choosing what type of legacy you are going to leave behind. So be choosy, be selective, and let's just get right into this video because I have so much to share with you guys. This story is about a young woman who shares her story about her childhood and upbringing, and honestly, the dysfunctional dynamic of her family and how she was able to overcome this and create a much more beautiful life for herself. So throughout this story, we're basically following Jeannette from when she was a baby, a child, all the way up until adulthood. And you see how hard she has to work in order to break these generational curses. And it is one of those stories that will just break your heart, but it's also extremely hopeful because the story is about these poor kids and how they are able to make a life of themselves and make a name for themselves even after all the horrific things they endured growing up. Just to give you guys a brief summary, her dad is an alcoholic. He is a big dreamer. He's always talking about the next big invention he's working on, or how he's able to beat other people playing poker and figuring out ways to make quick, fast money. But he does not have any source of stable income, and he's actually a very unstable man. He drinks, he goes on benders, he will leave the family for days on end, and although he is a loving dad, and you can see different times throughout the story, he tries to teach his children lessons and he tries to show them love in the way that he knows how, but he is not a symbol of what a father should be. As you guys know, a masculine man is all about protecting their children, providing for their children, being that source of stability and security. And unfortunately, her father is not this way. He's very erratic. He's all over the place. He can't keep a job. He can't even stay in a town for that long before getting evicted or kicked out. So that's what her father's like. On the other hand, her mother is far from being a good mom, unfortunately. She's an artist. She likes to create, paintings and things of that nature, but she doesn't have that mother's touch. She doesn't have that maternal care and love for her children that a mother typically embodies. And actually, she is very detached. She is also unable to keep a job, and she continuously complains throughout the story about having to take care of her children and having to go get a job because all she wants to do is paint and create art. So as you guys can see, putting these two people together in a couple is just a recipe for disaster, and that is what ends up happening. They come together, they end up having 4 children, the writer of the memoir being one of these children. And you see how their childhood is just full of struggle. And I am talking about just really horrible circumstances. The kids are literally living in a home that is not completely closed off. The roof is leaking, the stairs are broken, and typically the children will fall and you can see a recurring theme, the kids getting hurt, burning themselves because they're cooking hot dogs for themselves at age 3. And obviously a kid who is only 3 years old does not know the proper ways to be dealing with a flame and a cooktop and all that stuff. And so these kids are constantly getting banged up, burned, ending up in the ER, and their house is full of the worst of things that you could imagine. There's mold growing, the food which they have, which is very little, is covered in maggots. The kids are having to scavenge through the garbage cans at school just to find a meal. And the most horrific part too is they have so many resources available to them. Actually, even the daughter herself tells her mom that they're able to sign up for welfare or some sort of food stamps, and the mom is like, we don't need any handouts, we don't do that in this family. But she doesn't realize that her kids need this help in order to get food and in order to get the basic necessities that every child deserves. Not only this, but they actually have a quite wealthy family. So actually her grandmother is wealthy and she actually leaves them a house and some land, but the mom just doesn't really utilize these resources or sell the property, so she's never able to give her kids the life that they deserve. Clearly, when the kids are very young, they accept their parents as is, but as they grow older, they start realizing their parents aren't really fit to be a good mother and a good father, and they actually start resenting them, and a lot of hostility grows in the household, which I think is very common in circumstances where parents are not providing a healthy, safe, and loving environment for their children. So now that I've given you guys a brief summary of this memoir, I want to get into the key takeaways and lessons, because like I always preach on my channel, it's one thing to go through life and learn from our own mistakes, but it is even more powerful to learn from other people's mistakes. So that way we don't need to go through all of these things in order to actually grasp the lesson. We can read memoirs, read biographies, and learn from other people's wrongdoings and hopefully create a better life for ourselves. So the first takeaway is to choose a man who is stable and actually keeps his word. So like I mentioned in this memoir, Jeannette's mother marries this man who is an alcoholic, who doesn't have a job, who is not anywhere close to being financially able to support her or her children, let alone protect her. Typically, a father is someone who you look to for support, for guidance, for wisdom, and unfortunately, Jeannette's father is not that person for her. Actually, he is in over his head. He's a dreamer. And the memoir is called The Glass Castle because this is kind of a recurring motif in the story, and it's Jeannette's father's way of saying that he's working on a plan. He has a blueprint for this amazing house he's going to build the family. This glass castle is going to be powered by solar panels, and so it's a super exciting plan that the father has, but I'm sure by now you can kind of put the pieces together and figure out that this plan never comes to fruition, and it is just a far-fetched dream that is so far from being fulfilled. And this just goes to show that when you pick a man, one of the first ways to figure out whether or not he is a good masculine man is by seeing, does he keep his word? Does he just talk out of his ass, or is he actually getting things done? Does he just make plans, or does he take action? Because all of us want to be choosing men who take action, who do what they're supposed to do, who take lead and take charge, and who are able to provide for their family and protect their family. Takeaway 2 is that love is not enough. Throughout the story, you can see that the mom is not really happy with the dad's decisions. I mean, especially when he's gone days on end drinking, but she always uses love as an excuse. And even when the kids come forward to her and complain about their father, she's like, how could you? Your father loves you. And I think that this is a common theme, not just in this memoir, but in real life. We tend to grasp onto love and we think, hey, as long as someone loves us or as long as we love someone, that is enough. Love is never enough, you guys. There needs to be respect. There needs to be communication. There needs to be healthy boundaries. There needs to be a friendship and growth and all of these other things. Like, love is not going to pay the bills. Love is not going to protect your children. Love is not going to make anything easier for you. So although love is nice and love should be part of the recipe, love by itself is not enough, especially as a reason to stay with someone who is clearly toxic in multiple ways. Not only is the father destroying himself, but he's destroying his entire family by continuously choosing alcohol and these fun inventions rather than just getting a job and dedicating his life to making his family happy and making sure that everyone is healthy. Takeaway number 3 is that excitement does not equal peace. So in The Glass Castle, Jeannette's mom continuously states that one of the main reasons that she's attracted to her husband is because he's exciting and he makes their life an adventure. And I even chuckled reading this because I remember being young and thinking that finding someone who was exciting was such a top priority. I thought that that was so high up on my love list. And it was because I was so naive to think that excitement is long lasting, that excitement is going to help build long-term stability. And actually, excitement is one of the worst things that you can find in a partnership. Excitement means that your emotions are all over the place and you're not thinking clearly. And as you can see in this memoir, the mom really isn't thinking clearly, and it's probably due to this excess amount of excitement and the fact that they're always moving around and getting evicted and, barely scraping by. And so although Jeannette's mom sees this as a thrill, she doesn't realize that this thrill is coming at the expense of her sanity, of her health, of her happiness, and the same for her children. Takeaway number 4 is your choices will dictate your life. And in this memoir, you can see that at one point, the older sister tells Jeannette, I feel sorry for mom. She married this guy and he's inadequate and she doesn't even want to get out of bed. And Jeannette actually responds, she picked him, she chose him, she married him. And I think that that was a turning point in her life because she began to see her mom clearly. And instead of just feeling bad for her, she started realizing, hey, her mom chose this life. And actually, these kids need to feel bad for themselves because they are the ones who don't have a choice in this tragedy. At least the mom was the one who picked this guy. So she's just reaping the repercussions of that. But these children were born into this horrible environment that they had no choice or decision in. And that is why this is just such a key lesson, that instead of feeling bad for people who put themselves in horrible situations, start looking at it logically and realize that these people have a choice. Everyone has a part to play in their life. I mean, you are the main character in your life. So if you are choosing a person who is bad for you and toxic for you, then you are the one who is going to be suffering. But you need to take ownership of that decision and realize that your decisions are either going to make your life beautiful or they're going to make your life horrific. Takeaway 5 is that strong women will always get the best men. And this is something that Jeannette actually says herself. She says, what dad needs is a firm woman, someone who's going to put her foot down. And Jeannette, even from a young age, noticed this. She knows that it's not just her father to blame, but it's her mom. Her mom allowed her dad to walk in after disappearing for 3 days. Her mom allowed the dad to just make them move all over the country without saying, hey, if you cannot maintain a job in this town, you're out of here. I'm divorcing you. So being a strong woman is so crucial, because being a strong woman means that you have boundaries, you have standards, you're not going to let people walk all over you, and in turn people are going to respond and treat you differently. I'm telling you, the minute you put your foot down and show people that you're confident to walk out the door and you are not just going to take any sort of mistreatment, they're going to get their stuff together. And if they don't, then that's fine. But at least you were strong enough to know better. Takeaway number 6 is you can love your parents, but still choose to live drastically different lives from them. And that is exactly what Jeannette does. She, at one point in the story, says, I will never be like my mom. I will never choose a man who is like my dad. And it is kind of this, in essence, coming of age. And it's so harsh because generally your parents are the one who should be teaching you and guiding you and giving you that role model persona to look up to. But unfortunately, Jeannette has to make these conclusions all by herself. Takeaway number 7 is you break generational curses by analyzing your parents' patterns. So you will never live a better life than your parents if you are not able to look at their dynamic clearly and figure out how you can improve it, how you can make it better. Because with each generation, we should be trying to improve. We should be trying to become more wise. Don't just look at your life as, hey, these are my circumstances. My mom was in an abusive relationship, so that means I'm going to do the same. Realize that you can choose differently. You can look at your parents' life and figure out, what parts do I want to take from them and what parts am I not resonating with? This is why it's your life. And although, yes, your childhood and your upbringing is really going to shape who you are, at the end of the day, you control your destiny and you are able to steer your ship in any direction that you see fit. Takeaway number 8 is sometimes you may need to isolate yourself completely in order to start a new life. And you can see this in the memoir. Actually, 3 of the kids completely leave their parents and they start a new life in a different state, and it works out quite well for them. And unfortunately, one of the kids does not. She is younger, so she is actually still under the parents' household, and unfortunately, it does not pan out well for that youngest child. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, so I'm going to just leave it at that. But you can see a clear difference between the children who went on and created a completely different life for themselves by isolating themselves versus the one kid who was stuck with the parents. You can see how she became just a miniature version of her parents. And it's really heartbreaking, it's really sad, but I think that this is something that happens quite commonly in society, is living out the same dynamic of your parents, or not being able to break a generational curse and living out the same mistakes that your parents did. Takeaway number 9 is you might never get an apology from your parents. And I think that this is one of the hardest pills to swallow. Because even in this memoir, one of the last things her dad tells her is, "I never let you down, did I?" And it's almost just like a punch to the gut. Like, how could you think you never let me down after all this time? And let me tell you, there are multiple times when the father lets her down, whether it's stealing money from her, whether it is just wreaking havoc on plans that she has made. The dad is just continuously burdening not only his wife, but his children. And it's so sad that even at the end of his life, yes, he shows his daughter a lot of love, and he is always telling everyone that she was one of the most amazing things that he's ever created. But even in all that love and admiration, he is not able to just flat out sit down with his kids and apologize for not being a good man, for not being a good father, for not being a good husband. And I think that we need to learn how to live without getting an apology. I know that I personally have been hurt and heartbroken and betrayed, and a lot of times I did not get an apology. It's human nature to want closure and to want, that we want someone to come and ask us for forgiveness, but unfortunately that is just not the case. And sometimes even our own parents can't say sorry. You need to be willing to walk away and let go without getting an apology sometimes. That's just the truth of the matter. Takeaway number 10 is there is power in telling your story. And I just want to commend Jeannette Walls, because in sharing her story, I'm sure that she has not only inspired people, but I'm sure she has also warned people of what can happen if you don't isolate yourself and choose different and go through all these obstacles and hurdles to create a new life for yourself. You might be living out that same ugly life that your parents did. And so I just commend her for being able to be so vulnerable, especially about people she loves. These are her blood. She's talking about her mom, her dad, her siblings, and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of power to be able to tell the whole entire world about your family's dysfunction and your family's flaws and your family's weaknesses. And so I really think that she's a hero in a sense for sharing her story, and I hope that she inspires a lot of other people to tell their story, because this is how we all grow as a society, is by being vulnerable with one another and sharing stories and being able to learn from each other. So that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for being here. I love you guys. If you are into reading, I believe there's actually also a movie, so I totally recommend this book. It was a 5-star read for me, and as you guys know, I will be wrapping up my favorite books of 2022 at the end of the year. I've been reading a lot of amazing books, and I'd actually love if you guys could comment down some of your favorite book recommendations, and I will see you all very, very soon. Mwah. Bye!